Do you ever have one of those games you put on, not for the challenge, but instead you power up a game system to relax? You don't want nail-biting on the edge of your seat Sega arcade action. Today, you want to zone out and play a game for simply no other reason than to chill. And what better way to do that very thing than to Super Famicom and chill, or Nintendo 64 and chill, or even 3DS and chill with Pilotwings. Yeah, we almost got a GameCube and chill and a Wii and chill too, but you know, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to the beginning and look at how this franchise was made. This simple trilogy of games that honestly is too simple. Nobody just likes Pilotwings. You either get it and absolutely adore it, or you don't get it and therefore you don't like it. Whatever you think, this yet again rather simple set of games are actually super important from a historic point of view, because they were heavily responsible for some of the most important video game systems that we all absolutely cherish. And you know what? This is what we're going to be exploring today. Hi everybody, I'm Daniel Robertson, aka DJ Slope, and this is Pilotwings, the complete history. Welcome to Slope's Game Room. And guys, please do stick around until the very end of the video, because I will be unboxing the SawFun Retro Games subscription box. A monthly subscription box for retro video games. So yeah, are these worth it? Stick around to the end of the video to find out. Let's make our way back to the mid-80s, ladies and gentlemen, back when Nintendo was at the top of their game. Heck, why not even go back a little before that, when the company's first R&D team, that's research and development in case you didn't know, were responsible for the company's first proper arcade games. Nintendo's president Hiroshi Yamauchi and Hiroshi Imanishi put this team together, and before long the boringly named R&D turned into three smaller teams imaginatively titled R&D1, R&D2, and of course R&D3. So, what's the difference? Well, R&D1 was where it all began. This one was headed up by Gunpei Yokoi, pretty much since the beginning, and would be responsible for the arcade games, the LCD Game & Watch games, plenty of notable NES games such as the original Metroid and Kid Icarus, as well as eventually moving on to the Game Boy and Virtual Boy, but obviously that's quite far down the line. R&D2 was formed and headed by Masayuki Uemura, originally not doing too much besides assisting R&D1 on even more games. However, the team would eventually deal in the hardware side of the business, being primarily responsible for the creation of the Famicom, aka the NES. And R&D3 were pretty similar, headed by Genyo Takeda, who is known as Nintendo's first ever game designer, working on the arcade machine EVR Race. They would eventually be responsible for a lot of the technical design side of what goes into the NES, and more importantly, the chips in its cartridges. But on top of this, they also dabbled in the odd game and were responsible for the birth of the Punch-Out series. They all started at number 1, before it was even called number 1, but one by one, they all proved themselves individually and ended up heading up their own team, heavily focused on their individual strengths. And for a while, that's all we had. 3 studios, very rarely ever in friendly competition with each other, but instead working together for the greater gaming good. That was until Yokoi-san's young apprentice had some mild success when he converted the not-so-popular arcade unit Radar Scope into Donkey Kong, getting himself promoted and eventually becoming the head of the company's 4th division, R&D4. Shigeru Miyamoto. His team for the time wasn't exactly all that big. In fact, it was still just R&D1 that would be the company that Nintendo favoured as the top dogs when it comes to games. However, what Shiggs' crew may lack in size, they definitely didn't lack in talent. The team not only had the unknowing at the time Walt Disney of the video game world, but they also had Takeshi Tezuka, who helped create as well as completely direct several Mario and Zelda games, and Koji Kondo, who has made arguably the most memorable video game music that has ever been bleeped and blooped into your earlobes. Yep, it's fair to say that no matter how good R&D or R&D1 were to Nintendo, R&D4 were putting out some pretty consistent hits. In fact, they were putting out hit after hit after hit, some of Nintendo's very best games during the 80s. And obviously with the Super Famicom, or Super Nintendo if you prefer, on the horizon, this was the team that Nintendo pushed to create the 4 launch titles for the new system. And they were going to be doing this within only a 15-month time frame. Just imagine cramming 4 titles into one console launch and having them all created by that one same team. Thankfully, Nintendo had obviously picked up on the success of the small R&D4 crew and had boosted them up in size considerably by this point, where several smaller groups were actually formed inside this one bigger group again, and yes, Shigsy was pretty much overlooking them all. And it was here a whole 2 years before the release of the Super Famicom that we got our first ever look at what one of those smaller teams were working on for this new system. Now, bear in mind that the PC Engine was released in October of 1987 in Japan, the Mega Drive was released in October of 1988 in Japan, and this meeting you're about to see actually happened in November of 1988, only 1 month after the Sega Mega Drive. Yep, even though Sega were not exactly the competition that Nintendo were expecting them to be by this point, it's fair to say that these new demonstrations were created to show off what Nintendo does, and Sega Mega doesn't. The Jenny no can do. Say can't do it? Whatever. Over 200 people came to see what was going on. They came to see Shigeru Miyamoto himself explain how this new system will have graphics that are comparable to the new competition, but on top of that, they're going to be doing a little bit more. One of the members of the magazine Famicom Sushin goes into more detail. Roughly translated, they had this to say.
We've told you about the greatness of the graphics, but that's not all that's amazing about the Super Famicom. Here's why rotating, shrinking, and expanding background graphics in ways that have never been possible until now on a home console is such a big deal. You may think it's easy to just do these graphical rotations, but in fact, it's incredibly difficult to get this work done with software. It's kind of like running a marathon whilst doing your math homework. To solve this, we at Nintendo have developed hardware specifically designed for graphics processing. In other words, we have given the math homework to the hardware so that the software only has to run the marathon. This means the processing can be made faster, and because of this, high-speed rotations of backgrounds become possible. You'll be able to play games with a graphical quality unseen until now, games that rival those in the arcade.
Games such as Assault and Metal Hawk were used as explanations of this new spinny pixelated graphics feature, and to demonstrate it on the hardware, R&D4 showcased the first game that was honestly nothing more than a tech demo. The very first thing they ever showed off for the Super Nintendo was made in only a couple of months, and it was this, a little game called Dragonfly.
We are going to have to act if we want to live in a different world.
A game where you control a robotic helicopter-looking machine with obviously dragonfly wings in place of propellers. And in this demo, you could shoot, you could tilt, and you can spin, and well, not a whole lot else. Yes, it was basic, but the whole idea of this was to show off that the Super Nintendo could recreate what was going on in the arcades, change its perspective, and also show off this new Mode 7. Tadashi Sugiyama was the guy put in charge of this title, and as R&D4 continued to work on the 4 games ready for the system's launch, they used this new technology to create the Mode 7 Heavy F-Zero. The team also worked on the brilliant Super Mario World because, you know, they kinda had to. It's Mario, for Christ's sake. They showed off how brilliantly diverse the system was with games like SimCity, and for that 4th game, they decided to change up Dragonfly from a robotic dragonfly to a biplane and eventually change the name to Pilotwings.
When you decide to step up to this kind of power, this kind of challenge, this kind of flying, crashing, feeling, when you decide to get serious, there's only one place to come: the games of Super Nintendo. No one else creates this kind of experience, because no one else creates these kinds of games. Now you're playing with power, superpower.
Yes, it was 2 years later, and yes, out of all of the 4 that I just mentioned, this was probably the game they spent the least amount of time on after the initial demo was made. But honestly, don't let that put you off. The game was mesmerizing for the time, and now it actually still holds up. It's relaxing, but at the same time, it's challenging. It really is such a simple concept, which, as we just discovered, was always its intention. A flight simulator with one burning gameplay trait: the desire to try again. Even though it may not look like it has a lot going for it regarding its overall content, and to be fair, it doesn't, that desperate attempt to land that parachute or to make that landing always just feels out of reach. It's exciting when you feel like you pretty much just missed it, and no matter how many times you fail, which will be a lot, you keep finding yourself going back over and over again trying to nail it. One thing Nintendo does arguably better than anyone in the entire industry is to give you just one simple or a couple of very simple gameplay mechanics per game. It then chucks so many obstacles in your way that you have to completely work out how to use that simple gameplay mechanic from beginning to end, and you will become a complete master at using that gameplay mechanic. And this game is literally the definition of a first-party Nintendo game. A game that's easy to explain, and because of that, it's addictive to master even today when, let's be honest, a flight simulator from 1990 should have become completely obsolete. The success of this simple tech demo turned into a very simple game led to a whole heap of Mode 7 heavy video games. Sugiyama-san obviously went on to create the Mario Kart franchise, and as stated, F-Zero was already released. It has been reported in recent years that due to the success of the game, selling no less than 1.4 million copies, the development secretly began on Pilotwings 2, although just like before, it's believed that this game was created to test out something completely different: the Super FX2 chip. Now, we know this because Dylan Cuthbert, one of the guys that actually worked on Star Fox, which also used that same chip, told us publicly back in 2019 on Twitter. Yes, a prototype was made, but it was quickly canned, leaving Star Fox to move on with what they were doing on the SNES, whilst Nintendo looked to the future, a very, very polygon-heavy future. The Nintendo 64 was on the way, and Nintendo were actually looking at external companies to help with this new 64-bit machine. Enter Paradigm Simulation, a company that had never made a video game before on a console, but instead they had flight simulation experience. Founded back in 1990 in Texas, the company was responsible for several lengthy flight simulations and had such huge contracts as the Walt Disney Company, NASA, Boeing, and the United States of Defense. But of course, that was not all, because in 1994 Nintendo came a-knocking, primarily due to the flight simulation experience this company had with Silicon graphics machines.
And with an eye to the future, tomorrow begins today. Nintendo, the world's leader in video games, has joined forces with Silicon Graphics the world's leader in visual computing, to introduce the most exhilarating, breathtakingly realistic 3D video entertainment ever witnessed. Project Reality. Leagues beyond any currently available or anticipated hardware, Project Reality will bring to home video players the same types of astounding visual effects seen in movies, like Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park. When this technology is made interactive, players won't just watch their TV screens, they'll dive headfirst right through them. Dive right through them.
In the eyes of Nintendo, silicon graphics were the way forward. Just like before, the competition beat them to the punch, and for 9 months, Paradigm worked on nothing more than creating an engine for the N64 emulation system.
Our emulations are back, and I gotta tell you, it's been stunning. The visual quality and the speed and interactivity of the gameplay have been amazing. I can't wait for you as the world game players to be able to get your hands on this.
As stated, the company hadn't even put out a game on a console before, so this was new territory for them. I mean, it was obvious at this early stage that Nintendo wanted them for their 3D knowledge, and Paradigm were, well, they were doing what they always do. They were creating flight simulation software. But little did Paradigm know, they were actually being tested by the plumber hat-wearing gaming giants. In fact, besides the crazy crowds that Paradigm's tech demos would draw at trade shows leading up to this partnership, one of the only real games, if you could even call it a game, that was released beforehand was Certain Impact, and this was actually made for Silicon graphics machines. And for anyone out there that's ever played Pilotwings 64, well, I'm sure the comparison is pretty obvious. You fly a biplane around a 3D world, hoping not to crash, even though that's definitely what's going to happen, and although it is of course as jagged and muddy as a 3D game can get, keep in mind guys that this was 1993, and for the time, this is mighty impressive. Yes, 1993, the same year of Link's Awakening, Sonic CD, Mega Man X and Aladdin. This technology was simply mind-blowing, and although we had already seen the world of arcade gaming move to 3D by this point with games like Ridge Racer and Virtua Fighter, this was beyond anything that could be found in any arcade for the time, and you're most definitely not going to be playing this sort of stuff in the homes either. Well, not yet anyway. But of course, that was all about to change. Bring on May of 1995, May the 11th to the 13th of 1995 to be exact, at the first ever Electronic Entertainment Expo at the Los Angeles Convention Center, aka E3. The year that Sony dropped the big $299 price reveal for the first ever Sony PlayStation. The year that Sega was heavily promoting the North American release of the already released Sega Saturn in Japan. And the year that Paradigm worked their little cotton socks off in order to showcase what Nintendo's next offering could do with another little flying demo. And of course, it was a success. Now, bear in mind guys that Paradigm were not brought on for any other reason than to showcase what the N64 could do and to teach Nintendo what the N64 could do. There was no talk of a Pilotwings 64 game at this point, but as Nintendo constantly threw experiments at Paradigm and Paradigm constantly tackled it and done it very, very well, it was only a matter of time for Nintendo to completely can that Super FX chip version of Pilotwings and gave the go-ahead to Paradigm to make Pilotwings 64. And of course, this game was headed up by Makoto Iwata, and with the help of Shigeru Miyamoto and Hiroki Takanaka producing the gameplay, with obviously Paradigm continuing on with all of the technical stuff, the game started its new development path.
2, 3, 4, hit it!
Now, the final product is a game that again is super relaxing to play, perhaps even more so than the first game, yet for those that want a challenge, it's here. Games like Pilotwings showcase how times have changed and then some. For a game to be full price nowadays and worth the money, they need to be filled to the brim with a stupid amount of content rather than just one simple gameplay mechanic on loop. I mean, I may be wrong, but a game like Pilotwings coming out today may be slapped down a peg or two due to its simplicity, but for me, It's that simplicity that makes it what it is. I would happily pay full price for something like this, a game that's going to last me years and years compared to the latest Medal of Creed Game of the Year edition, because when you dig deep, it offers more than what's on the tin. The more you play around with this game's several aerodynamic vehicles, the more mini modes, similar I suppose to the Monkey Ball mini games, will be unlocked. It's an addictive reward system that you will want to complete, not just for completion's sake, but also to see what else is available to you. And as you do, you will learn to completely adore exploring the world of Pilotwings and finding all of the hidden Easter eggs that it has to offer, and listening to a mostly incredible soundtrack along the way. Just like the game that came before it and after it, in all honesty, Pilotwings 64 is a game that not everybody will get, but those that do tend to adore it. There seems to be no middle ground here. Sure, for the time it sold rather averagely, mostly because it was going up against Mario 64, but over time people picked it up and it became a bestseller for the system. And just because I love to bring up how stupid the press were back then, here is the New York Times talking about both Super Mario 64 and Pilotwings 64 after they were showcased at E3 1996.
Mario has been Nintendo's biggest seller over the years, and it makes sense for the company to come out with a new version. But it also shows the weakness of Nintendo's tying its future to the successes of the past. Kids who grew up with the lame, side-scrolling world of old Mario will love this game. Adults will probably shake their heads at the squandering of such technology. Pilotwings 64 is another example of a Nintendo game that is wonderful in its technology, but brain dead in its play. The object of the game is to fly around in a variety of simple aircrafts and hit a few targets. Pilotwings takes place in a cartoon world that is similar to Mario's. Young children will probably love this game for its simplicity, and parents will appreciate its lack of violence. But I suspect even young children would rather fly a dragon on Sony's PlayStation than sail through Nintendo's skies with nothing to do. No doubt the games will improve after Nintendo 64 is released in the fall, and this machine will probably sell like hotcakes. But the uninspired nature of Nintendo's opening roster is sign of the slipping influence of the consoles and the shift of creative power to the desktop PC.
After the N64, we had one of my favourite Nintendo systems of all time. We had the GameCube. And Factor 5 were the guys behind a new instalment of the Pilotwings franchise. The plan was that after Rogue Squadron 3, work would begin on Pilotwings 3, as teased by Satoru Iwata back at E3 2003.
And the same talented people at Factor 5 who designed this game are also at work on another exclusive for GameCube. You will be hearing more about this soon.
However, that exclusive game never happened. It's come to light in more recent years that the cancelled GameCube game was actually a bit of a reimagining for the series, taking place during the beginning of the Cold War, training and then carrying out secret missions, all aviation styly. It's a tone that honestly I'm not down with, not for a Pilotwings game anyway. But with Factor 5 at the helm, the brilliant Factor 5 that were responsible for the GameCube's excellent Star Wars games, I think it's fair to say that this would have at least felt like a Pilotwings game at heart. As you know, after the GameCube came the Wii, and the company ended up having another crack at the Pilotwings formula, pretty much picking up where they left off. And thankfully, for me, they weren't going down the Cold War route setting of the previously mentioned game, and instead they were keeping the spirit of the original games intact. And, spoiler alert, this also cancelled game was going to be absolutely huge. Flying around an obviously smaller version of Earth, checking out famous landmarks along your way, and most impressively, just like the two previously released games, the intention of this new Wii game was to play around with the new technology. And nope, I'm not talking about the Wii's motion controls. By swapping the motion sensor bar that would normally sit above or beneath your TV, in this version they wanted the Wii remote pointing directly towards you, and with you wearing custom made glasses with a single LED light on each side of the frame, the user can now move around freely, giving off a sort of virtual reality based effect not seen on rival consoles. For whatever reason, in 2008, Nintendo turned down the pitch, most likely due to them pretty much reviving the series in their own way, and even though Factor 5 continued on with the project without the Pilotwings name attached, it sadly never came to be. Now, before we get to the final installment within the world of Pilotwings, I think it's probably best that we bring up Wii Sports. Again, it's not technically a Pilotwings game, but the sequel to Wii Sports, called Wii Sports Resort, did in fact feature an airplane mode and a skydiving mode. Again, it's not a real Pilotwings game, as the majority of the game is actually based on all of the other events, but still, it's hard to not go back to the Birdman unlockable in the original N64 release, flying around the island for no other reason than to do that very thing. There doesn't seem to be much of a purpose and there's hardly any objective here. You just let your curiosity lead the way, exploring Woohoo Island and its various destinations scattered around the map. This mode was actually kind of teased when the Wii was first showcased for Wii Sports, but for whatever reason it wasn't implemented into the release of the greatest selling single game of all time, which apparently is Wii Sports. Now, even though this feature wasn't heavily promoted in regards to Wii Sports Resort, it is actually often looked at as being one of the very best parts of the game. And because of this, it was all completely reworked into a 3DS version of the game, which was entirely based on that flying mechanic. I am of course talking about the first ever Mii integrated 3DS game, Pilotwings Resort. Yet again, the game was released to show off the new capabilities, that being the 3D features of the new handheld. Sadly, if you've played Wii Sports Resort, then you're not going to find much extra here. Sure, a few more aerodynamic activities obviously find their way into this release, but all in all, it's pretty much a typical port of the Wii game with fewer options, obviously because the 3DS doesn't have Wiimote accessibility. But thankfully, instead, it has plenty more of what is actually most people's favourite part of the game, and best of all, it's all in 3D. Something that is honestly overlooked, because this is a game where the 3D genuinely helps you along your way. Thankfully nowadays this lackluster sequel goes for less than £10 online, and honestly that's the perfect price for it. At first glance, like all of the other games, it may not seem like you have a lot here, but make no mistake, even if you put it down after a couple of hours after picking it up, it's still excellent fun for those few hours, and you will always remember that feeling, bringing you back time and time and time again. And that's why this series is so great. It's the literal definition of why retro gamers love retro games. A game that several times over pushed the hardware, but at the same time, it kept it simple. With smooth, jazzy, memorable music, there really is nothing quite like taking to the skies and, well, not doing a whole lot else. Hey there guys, thanks for checking out the video. Yeah, I really enjoyed making Pilotwings: The Complete History. I didn't expect this series to be so important to the creation of some of Nintendo's most popular systems. So yeah, I really enjoyed looking into this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Now it's the part of the video where I like to give a massive shout out to all of my Patreons, all of my YouTube members, but before I do, let's have a ganders at this video's sponsor, Super Famicom Retro Games. Now, I say sponsor, I haven't been paid to look at these. I'm getting a kickback if you guys do decide to sign up yourself, but yeah, the boxes were free and I haven't actually been given any money to look at these. I've just been sent the boxes. So this is Sawthumb's Retro Games subscription box. You choose what system you want. I have chosen the original PlayStation and the original Xbox. It's about £17 roughly to get one of these subscription boxes. It's less than that if you decide to go yearly, all that sort of thing. Let's find out if they're actually worth it. So this is the heavier one. I'm guessing this is the original Xbox. Let's see if this is worth it. So we'll say about £17. Let's have a look. Straight away, I'm happy. Sweeties. I can see the top game, guys, and I am happy. There it is. Oddworld's Munch's Odyssey. Now, I do actually own this game already. You know, it's the luck of the draw when you do subscription boxes, but good quality disc. Yeah, nice. Manual, all that sort of stuff. Very good. Ooh. I don't own this one. Star Trek Shattered Universe, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to have to look up the prices of these. I think this one goes for a pretty penny. Disc is looking crisp. Manual. What have we got next? Project Gotham Racing 2. Not bad. I think it's probably one of the cheaper ones that you normally get on here. Awesome. Finally. Ooh. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon. Excellent. And yet again, look. Nice booklet. All these discs. I don't know if they put them through something because they are absolutely brand new quality. They are absolutely crystal clean. 17 quid roughly. That ain't bad. Oddworlds and Star Trek for me are the big winners. I'm happy with that box. Like I say, I own Munch's Odyssey, but I'll be using that as fodder to get something else. But that's a good box. Let's look and see if they did as well with the original PlayStation box. So again, we got some sweeties. Tomorrow Never Dies 007 game. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this probably isn't a game I would ever buy. But yeah, I mean, it's all in pretty good nick. Manual, again, the disc is absolutely crystal clean. Up next, we've got another Rainbow Six game. So Rainbow Six Rogue Spear. This one doesn't come with a manual. And finally, we have, Toka 2 Touring Car. And that one, again, doesn't come with a manual, but the disc is, they're absolutely crystal clean, the discs. I think that's pretty good. If you guys are interested in signing up yourself, there'll be links down below. Like I said, you can choose other systems. There was things like Master System on there. There was the 360. Not bad. So, let's give a massive shout out to the Patreons and YouTube members that help support this show every single month, shall we? Yes, we shall. With an extra big shout out going to Aaron Gorman, Agent Smith, aka Retro Gamer, Adrian Dalton, Andrew Ward, Arista, Benjamin Guy, Big Rico, Bram Perez, Brandon Gold, Caesar, Dr. Souza, Caesar de Souza, am I saying that right? Cheshire One, Chris the Shapeshifter, Christopher DeVeo, Clan Bob, Conrad Constantine, Cremella, Control Alt Reese, Daniel Terares, David Yaron, Dina, Dominic Davenport, Game Apologist, Gary Pinkett, Harvey2478, Hut, Ignacio, Jesus, Creto, Carasido, Intrigued Gaming, Jay is Manchild, Jabba Al Aiden, Jacob P, aka Avalon Janes, Jeff Ladd, Jeff Mianowski, Jeremy Rodriguez, Jonathan Hayward, Kevin Heaton, Kinglink Reviews, Lucas Softtail, Lipped Man of God 9000, Man Shovel, Marcus Kingimo Cut, Tyndall, Michael Towns, Mind of the Unsane, Nicholas Bertner, Nick Pollard, Nightwill, Petty Mew, Pretendo64, Roll Van Prugen, RetroReversing.com, Retro to Next Gen, aka Lou, Richard Alderjic, Richard Carter, aka Fantastic Dizzy, Rocket Plod, Rovan Army, Ryan Holt, Sashi Dog, Samuel Nilsson, Shade Silence, Shadow Dragon, Solace Captor, Stephen, Taylor Rainwater, That Gamer, The Cunning Linguist, The Shaded J, Tim Labonte, Tim Lunn, Todd Paul Flow G, Trans Rights, Vike Echo, Wobbles and Bean, The Wonder Ducks, and Ye Old Hamburglar. Like I said, guys, if you guys want to support the show and see videos like the one you've just seen here early, as well as plenty of Kick Scammer episodes, which is the next video I'm working on, then please do consider becoming a Patreon or YouTube member. I hope you've been liking the videos recently, guys. I'm really trying to push myself quality-wise, and like I say, I hope you're enjoying it. So until next time, guys, this is DJ Slope signing out, and hopefully I'll see you all next time.